So we've been touching upon this Gita Dhyana Shlokam over the last couple of weeks, right? So I thought we will continue with it first understand the gist of what is conveyed in those 9 verses, right? So I think we covered till about the sixth verse or the 5th verse last week. So moving on, like, yeah, 6th verse. And the 7th verse, which is Parasharya Vachasaroja Mamalam. Right? The first is the word Parashara. Parashara is none other than the father of Vedavyasa himself. So it says that Vedavyasa, who is the son of Parashara, right? He is the one who put together this Mahabharata, right? Again, even in this particular verse, there is a particular symbolism that is taken or a simile that is taken. It's like a lake. In the lake, there is a lot of water, and in that, there is a lotus that is blooming. So is it that the water from which the lotus has bloomed is, is all having representing the words of sage Vyasa, who's none other than, Parashara's son. Flower. They signify the stories that are there in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Mahabharata, etc. Of what? Of glories of Lord Vishnu. See how it is, right? The pollen grains. And pollen grains, right, is where the bees come and, they take all the nectar and so forth. So what is that nectar? Who is the one that's drinking that nectar? The bees. They are each and every one of us. They are the devotees. So the devotees are blessed by drinking that nectar from the pollen grains, which has got all, and by doing that, what happens when you listen to the glory, what happens? The devotion builds in. Somewhere the connection with the divine builds in. And that is what is signified in this particular verse, is that once the nectar of that flower, of that lotus flower is had by the devotees, like each and every one of us, it then builds a devotion. And when the devotion builds in, and then you start surrendering to the divine, what happens? You can overcome all the ills that happen. Kalimala Tadvamsinashe. Kalimala means what in this age of Kali Yuga, there's, so many things are said, right? Negatively, it's not good, that's not. And Guruji has always said there's one thing. Every yuga there has been some good things, and there have been demons even before, there are even demons now. Right? It is a question of how we face those demons. So here, what said in this Gita Dhyana Shlokam is that by being in devotion, by being in the space of the divine, one can overcome the ills of Kali Yuga. What are those ills? Be it hatred, jealousy, anger, crime, whatever it might be that one can think of. And so that, so you can see that, how he's connecting the knowledge that's coming in and how he's putting Vedavyasa in terms of, the nectar from the lotus, and also his father here. So many people are, glorified in this particular verse. Moving on to the eighth verse, Mukam karoti vachalam, pankam lankayate giram, right? Yat kripa tamaham vande paramananda madhavam. Kripa. What does kripa means? Faith. I'm sorry, grace. What is he talking about grace here? Once we surrender to the divine, or let's say surrender to the Guru, grace automatically follows, right? Gratitude, with gratitude, you go down, you surrender, grace follows. And the impossible of things can happen. So he takes 2 examples here. What is the first example that he takes? Mukam karoti va. Muka means what? Somebody who's a dumb person. A dumb person can, with the grace of the Guru, grace of the divine, become eloquent. He starts talking. And, we have in the ashram examples of that. People who are, couldn't utter even a mantra are today uttering the best of mantras, right? In the Gurukul school. So, so that is what that's what a grace can do. And grace is not just something that, Guru does. It starts from the disciple or the devotee surrendering to the Guru, and with a lot of gratitude, lot of greatness. and everything happens. The second example he takes is Mukam karoti vacham pankam lankayate girim. A person who has got broken legs, and amputated legs, right? That he can cross mountains. He can cross mountains. How can he cross mountains? One can imagine, right? One you can say is by what you call miracle. That is one way to look at it. But the other way to do it is also is when you surrender, there is a willpower. There is, willpower increases. There is a confidence that comes in. I can do. I can. That earlier what was withholding you from doing it, suddenly the guru gives that power. You can, challenge yourself to do the impossible, right? And if you see, Guruji has always said, if a problem comes to you, it means that you can do it, or with the help of somebody you can handle it. Right? If nothing comes to you which you cannot do. So here, once there is a mountain to be climbed, and there is no choice, but you have to go to the other side of the mountain for something. How do you handle it? Is by saying, all I can do is I can do my best here, but give me that power, give me that, that willpower with which I can do it. So here we have to ask ourselves, we are also here on a journey. What is the journey we just started a few weeks back? We are on the journey of learning the Bhagavad Gita. It is a mountain by itself. 700 verses. By no means it's a small thing, isn't it? So what does it need? It needs that, unless there is a blessing, unless there's a grace, it ain't going to happen. It is only with the blessing it all got started, right? Even though some of us triggered it, ultimately without anybody's grace, nothing starts. Especially such a divine journey like going into the scriptures of this poem called Bhagavad Gita. Now, for it to continue, for it to sustain, also there is both an individual effort from each and every one of us, and also the determination, the commitment, the discipline that I'm going to follow myself. Once I put forth my steps saying, I will do it, I'll come to the class, I will do the due diligence in terms of, remember the three things we said in every learning that we have to follow? One is to learn, which is Shravanam. Second is Mananam, which is to introspect and clear any doubts or, ponder a lot more, ask questions. And the third is Nidityasanam, which is internalizing it, applying it, and making it part of my life. So all these three are necessary. If I follow these regimens, right, automatically things happen. So we are here to fight that, like this Mukam Karoti Vachalam, we have to be in that space. The last verse, Paramananda Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha. So you see the word, right? Brahma, Rudra, Varuna, all of these people are said. It says here that Krishna, first of all, I salute the divine, which is Krishna or Vishnu. Second is, we worshipped also. Who's he worshipped by? Brahma, right? He's worshipped by Varuna, Indra, Rudra, and Vayu. If you see this verse, right? Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Tunvanti Divjaistavaihi. So all of these people, how is he worshipped? By glorious chants. Right? How is Rudra worshipped? By Rudra, and Chamakam that we hear every Monday, in the ashram. So similarly here, how is he worshipped here? From the sacred chants. And these sacred chants are not ordinary chants. These are Samaveda chants. Samaveda chants is considered very poetic. It's very, you just can meditate by just listening to it. It doesn't matter any chant, but Samaveda is even more special. In one of the later chapters of Bhagavad Gita, in fact, Krishna will, tell all of us that amongst all the Vedas, of all the chanting, for him, the favorite is Samaveda. But, it's because, it just is, it's like a singing, right, in a particular tune. And what do they sing? They sing the Vedas and the Upanishads essence. So this verse is talking about the worshipping of divine beings such as Brahma, Varuna, Indra through, through the prayers or through the sacred chants which are Samaveda and so forth. And then yogis, one of the lines it says there, that yogis are the ones who see themselves by, once they also surrender, once they also do these chanting. Yogis are what, this word yogi will come a lot in Bhagavad Gita as we go on. Yogi is not some dadiwala, let's be very clear about it. Yogis are somebody who are very spiritually evolved. So they've been doing the practices, they are very centered, and so forth. So these yogis are who are well established in devotion, well established in being connected with the higher, which is be it the guru or be it the divine. They see themselves not separate from the divine, the oneness, right? And the last line of this verse, it's a very beautiful one. It says that the end of whose end means what? The end of this divine is not known by either the devas or the asuras. We know, right? And it's just more there is a symbolism to say that there is no end, right? There is no end. It is it's something that has got no start and no end. And this particular last line links in with one of the stanzas we just touched upon last week. We will get to that now. So if you see this nutshell, right, this whole, what you call the Gita Dhyana Shlokam, about 9 stanzas, it is very poetic. It brings the glory of all the people who are involved in it from a Mahabharata perspective, the key people being Vyasa, Lord Krishna himself, and also glorifies Krishna in terms of what all he can do, right? How he brought the Upanishads messages to us by Gita. So the essence of that is also sort of said, it's not like, you don't instead of reading all those Upanishads, learn the Gita and you've gotten the essence of it. And then he talks about the fact that, the person who's giving this knowledge to all of us, just Lord Krishna, he is worshipped by devatas or lots of devatas himself. So, in a sense, right, once we hear this and when we chant it with that understanding of what these verses mean, what does it do? It just connects us, right? It just says that, I'm going to learn something, or I'm going to get into these verses, which has got so much of essence. It's coming from, such a supreme power that, that by no means should I should just pay full attention to it, see what all messages are conveyed, and live a better life based on whatever the messages that are coming from this. So with that, we will now go to the second chapter. We started the second chapter, right, last week. Now let's just take in a nutshell what all I'm not going to go into the details, but nutshell is what Arjuna was totally confused in the first chapter, right? He was going nowhere. He was philosophically saying things which didn't make any sense to anybody. And Krishna was patiently waiting. And ultimately, Arjuna said, I'm lost. I need clear directions from you. He didn't say direct, he said clear directions from you. And it is at that time that, Lord Krishna opened his mouth to start his teaching, which is the 11th verse that we started with. The 11th verse is really the beginning of Bhagavad Gita from the standpoint of the core messages. All the others are more of prerequisites, etc., right, that comes into play. So one of the things that might come to our mind, right, in all of this, if you sit from the top here, why was Arjuna qualified for this? Why not somebody else? Why was this conveyed to Krishna, Arjuna? How did Krishna pick up? We would have that doubt, right? So many other people. Even Yudhishthira was very evolved. He was a dharmic person, etc. And to that, I think we have to go back to one of the episodes or one of the instances that happened right before the war. All of you would know this. Guruji has also talked about this, right? That the instance is what the war is imminent, right? Whatever mediation, whatever guidance that Krishna could do to both the parties. Nobody was, Kauravas were not willing to listen. They said they are not going to give 1 inch of that space to Pandavas. And so it seemed very much that, the war had to happen to decide who is the victor. Now, in that sense, now what happened is that, people started building their own set of the army for themselves, right? So, Duryodhana would go to his pals, his relatives, and so forth, and say, come and fight for me, come and fight for me. And similarly, it was happening on the other side. And then came the question of where does Krishna go? Lord Krishna go. So the instance is Lord Krishna is lying down on his bed, maybe an afternoon nap, and both Arjuna and Duryodhana come in a particular sequence. And, first is Arjuna who comes in and he sits at the feet of Lord Krishna. And Duryodhana comes in and, he feels, he's got a lot of ego, that, right? So he says, who's going to sit near the feet? I'm going to go sit close to him, near the face, so that he can see me. And of course, Lord Krishna was fully aware of what is happening, but he was showing that he was asleep. Yeah, somebody can mute. There's a bit of background somewhere sound coming. If you can mute yourself, please. Yeah, maybe Kalpaji, maybe from your side, you can just check. If you can, please mute yourself.
What is it?
Yeah. No, if there is a background somewhere, you can mute yourself, is what I said.
Okay.
Yeah. So, so Krishna wakes up and he sees Arjuna right in front of him. But, Duryodhana says, I'm sitting here, you've not seen me. He said, as I wake up, I see what is right in front of me, which is, I see Arjuna. No, Duryodhana kept fighting. But, see, listen, he's younger to you, you being the bigger brother, let him, give him a chance. What are you here for? So the question that Arjuna asked, Krishna knew what they were there for. So he asked, who do you want me? So he gives a proposal to both of them. There are 2 choices you have, right? Either myself alone, and I will not take 1 arrow from my, I'm not going to have a bow and arrow. I will just be myself. I will not fight. Or my entire army. I have a, boatload of people who can fight. Either one, right? You pick and choose. And he gives this option to Arjuna, and the first option was, of course, given to Arjuna. Arjuna, even without thinking 1 second, he says, I just want only you. Just you. That's it. And Duryodhana that's what he was waiting for. He said, what is this useless one person sitting there? I want somebody who can fight, somebody who can, kill your enemy, right? And the more I have, the merrier it is. So he said, yeah, no problem. Please give me all the army. You can, you can take Krishna, etc. Be there. What does this tell us? Think about it, right? See, if you see from an Arjuna perspective, he was a Kshatriya. Kshatriya is a person who is always, life is all about bow and arrow, fighting, and fighting for the right things, etc., right? And yet, knowing fully the fact that, there is an army that Krishna had, he chose Krishna. The symbolic aspect of this is the army of Krishna represents matter. And Krishna as a person represents what is behind that matter, what makes that matter, manifest itself. So the essence of that matter. So Arjuna chose that. Now he had no knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. In fact, Bhagavad Gita all comes later on in the battlefield. But the fact that he chose Krishna, in a sense, at the time, is what makes him qualified, that he was looking for something beyond, right? And he knew that there was some, some aspect of Krishna that was beyond norm. Because he's been friendly with him, you've seen him mediate, you've seen him do multiple things. So somewhere he chose Krishna over that matter. And that is why they said that, he in a sense was ready to go to the next step, to ready to receive, more about understanding what life is all about. What is it that makes matter, manifest itself, etc., which is the core of Bhagavad Gita. I just thought I'll give that background, even if those of us who have listened to Ashtavakra Gita, right, one of the first few verses Guruji starts with is, who are the people who are qualified to learn this knowledge? We all recall that particular thing. Similarly here, all of us are qualified, right? It is not that we have to have some 10 criteria sitting here, but we have to be in that stage of what Arjuna was. Right? I'm trying to go beyond all this nonsensical things that I may be dealing with, which is giving me a lot of pain and this and that, right? So how do I go beyond that? And that's with that mindset I'm coming, with an open mind to learn. And you will see that Arjuna had such an open mind. Right? In fact, if you look at Bhagavad Gita chapter, second chapter itself, Krishna probably covered pretty much the essence in some sense. And yet you'll notice that Arjuna has got a lot of questions. He was doing that mananam himself. And he asked a lot of questions. So third chapter comes. Third finishes, he's got some more questions. So it's like that, it goes on till the 18th chapter. So that aspect of questioning, the aspect of wanting to know more, aspect of, going deeper in knowledge, right, was something that was, so much embedded in Arjuna. And that is the space we all need to be in, right? Is when we learn this thing, look at it with a blank slate. I may have read a lot of things, and I might have, so forth. But here, look at it from an open mind and see what are the things that I can take away from here. And if there's something that doesn't make sense, I ponder, I ask questions, etc. So moving on, so we touched upon one thing it starts with, so look at it from a Krishna perspective, right? Arjuna has put his arrow down, bow down. He doesn't want to fight. So the first thing that Krishna wants Arjuna to do is fight. Things, etc. He has to go to the very highest knowledge, the knowledge of the self to start with. So that, he can, from that highest knowledge, he can put some indicators and say, because of this, you should fight. And you'll see these in these verses as we go on. So we touched upon a couple of things, these verses, and one of the last things we touched upon is what is real and what is unreal. Real means satya, truth. You can also call it as truth. What is truth and what is untruth? Truth is not about whether I say lies or not. That is a different meaning. Here it is about what is, maybe we should just look at it about what is real versus unreal. Real here, pure definition wise, is what is something that does not change, changeless. Unreal is something that is temporary. That means it is a start and as an end. So we all know, right? What is a start and end? Starting with ourselves. We were born on a certain date. We are going to leave that body on a certain date. Our emotions are one particular thing in the morning and it changes, and the emotions change something to something different later in the day. Our body itself is going through changes every second, every day. Some cells are dying, some cells are being born. So at a body level, physical level, at a mental level, emotional level, things are constantly changing. But there is some substratum, right, that is observing this change. That is almost like on top of which all of these things are changing. In the best one of the examples we can take, for example, right? If I have river to flow seamlessly, what is required? A base, let's say a river bed, which is not moving. River bed which is strong base. If I have a porous surface, or if the riverbed itself is moving, right, then the river will flow, but it will be a lot more effort for it. On the other hand, if there's a stable substratum or a stable still substratum, right, on which the change happens, the river represents the change, And the substratum represents what? The embodied self in all of us. You can call it the spirit or the consciousness, whatever we refer to. Now, he's going to give us lots of these attributes of what this embodied self is in these verses. The first thing he says is, what is truth or what is real? So the first thing, if you see from a Sanskrit perspective, it says Atma Satyaha. That is the first thing, right? And we went into it quite a bit in the last thing, right? Is that for us to observe a change, there has got to be something witnessing it that is changeless. Otherwise, you can't see a change. Something still can only monitor something that is moving, correct? So therefore, if I'm sitting on the side of the road, I can observe the traffic moving, which is moving. Right? So that steady state or the substratum, right, is what we are referring to here is that embodied self here, or we can call it for now, let's call it the spirit for now, right, from just ease of wording. So Atma Satyaha. The second verse, 17th verse, we will chant that here. Avinashitu tadviddhi ena sarvamidam tatam vinasha mavyaya syasya na kaschit kartumarhasi. So the 17th verse, what it says that, you know, there are two things that comes up here. It is indestructible. And we will probably get into what this indestructible is in a couple of verses from now. But the second part of it that it talks about is, it is all pervading. It is everywhere. There is nothing that exists other than it. So Guruji has always taken this example. Take the example of space for us, right? The space in a room. Everything happens in space. Space is everywhere, right? Let's say I'm sitting in a house right now. You know, for some years, you know, let's say 20 years later or 10 years later, they say, you know, the house needs to be demolished because of repairs and other things. I demolish it. What remains? Still the same space that I'm sitting in. It's just that the walls are not there, but the space is still the same. So that is the way we have to understand that, you know, the thing that is constant, that remains, and the space that is inside my four walls and the space that's outside the four walls on the street, still the same. It's all pervading. And in Sanskrit, this is referred to as Sarvagataha. Sarvagataha means it's everywhere. So the first thing we learned was what? Atma Satyaha. And the second one we are learning is Atma Sarvagataha. Sarvagataha means what? It is all pervading, it is everywhere. And the best way for us to look at it is space. Now, one thing about this changing aspect, right, or the changing aspect, a lot of us, right, if you look at it in our life, we get sometimes a bit discomforting with change, right? Too many things are changing. You know, if you see today in the world, you know, some war happening here, you know, not clear what is going to happen to this country, that country. During Corona, we had the best of tests in terms of what the next day was going to be, was totally uncertain. Uncertainty at the peak was Corona time, right? But what our scripture says and what our guru has said all the time, in all of this, become aware, right? And continuously become aware of the fact that there is one constant, one substratum that does not change. And that is where the ultimate security comes from. We think security comes from the world of change. And you know that security doesn't come from change, right? Because what you take for granted today, whether it is your friend or whether it is an object or whatever, can change. The same air that we took for granted before Corona suddenly said, you know, air, you watch out, put a mask, put this, that, etc. And so what do you cling on to? What do you cling on to say that, you know, I need something to hold on to here? And for us at that particular time, it was, you know, and Guruji did it very beautifully at the time with all the meditations, with all the knowledge, etc. Right? That we made sure that, you know, that he was there to count on him, right? He was there. And just his presence made us more comfortable. And that is the simple truth that we have to imbibe, right? Is that amidst all the changes, which brings in a sense of insecurity, the only thing in life that can bring security is not anything outside. It's something that is inside, deep inside us. So that was the 17th verse. Now we go on to the 18th verse. We'll chant that one. Antavanta ime dehaha nityasyokta sharirinaha anashino prameyasya tasmad yudyasva bharata. Yeah. So here he brings in one more attribute. He says incomprehensible. What does it mean, incomprehensible? Incomprehensible means I can't perceive it. It is beyond my level of comprehension. Even let's take world matter, right? How many things do you think we perceive? We all know that our level of ability to see, visualize through our eyes itself is limited. Our ability to see things in the night, yeah, we can see, but it's very limited compared to that of many birds and other things that can see much better than you and I. Same thing with our ears, the frequency range that we can hear and then act upon is limited compared to the range of frequencies that are available on this earth. So like that, our sense organs, therefore, the level of perception is limited. So comparative to that, right, there is a lot more available even in the worldly space of matter. Now leave the matter alone, right? We are going beyond matter here. So here, what is he saying? Something so subtle, something so abstract, right? It does not sound, it is not vision. It is something deep, deep, deep inside. One can only experience it. That cannot be comprehended. So we just have to come to terms with the fact that, what I know is very little. I just know very little, right? I just keep my, my intellect open, to be able to receive, all the things that make what life happen. So why is he saying all of this, right? Is he's trying to motivate Arjuna in some sense that to fight. So if you see that last word, Tasmat Yudhyasva Bharata. Bharata is again another word for Arjuna. And he says, fight, therefore, realize that, this spirit is indestructible, it is all pervading, and it's also incomprehensible. So fight. So fight here, what does it mean for all of us? It's a question. Now for Arjuna, it makes sense, fight. We don't have a bow and arrow. What do we think it is? Fight to us means act. Don't sit idle. Don't be in inertia when challenges happen in life, right? When I have to face difficulties, when I go through some periods of, very challenging situations, whatever they may come, rather than pondering about why did this happen, I should not have had that one, act. And fighting mentality means what? I am capable of doing it. It is that mukam karoti vachalam pankam lankayate giram, right? Not giving up. A person who's not able to speak, a person who has got lame legs, for him, it is, things have been removed from him that you and I all have. Right? We sometimes don't even appreciate the fact that I have 4 limbs, I have eyes, I have ears, and all of them are functioning well. And when we go around and see people who don't have it and you see them do things, you just wonder, it's an awe feeling, right? How did they get the willpower to do it? Somewhere there is a divinity in stake, not in stake, divinity in place that makes it all happen, right? It is therefore, to surrender to him, realize that ultimately, everything happens with that confidence, faith, whatever you call it, right? And then acting. So the equivalent of fighting, that's for Arjuna, is for us to act. Act whenever necessary, not tomorrow, not later. What is it I can do today? I might be able to do only a part of it today, but I should start acting on it today. So, I want to touch upon one other thing we just already talked. We talked about this so-called witness, right? Witness is what? This unchanging thing. So we said that a person who's sitting on the side of the road is a witness to the things that are moving on the road. Right? It's a witness. So similarly, there is a witness inside each and every one of us that's actually observing the fact that, every day I'm going through some changes. Every day my emotions are changing, my body is changing, people around me are changing. What is one example, you can think of, right? One example you can take is, a photograph. If you have gone to weddings, right? I just happened to be in a function this afternoon. I just came back. There's a lot of pictures were being taken. The pictures are taken. Pictures, also people are there. So you see the picture. Who is it that you don't see? Shefali, you want to say?
The one who's taking the picture.
Yes, absolutely. The photographer. Photographer is a witness. You don't see him there, him or her, but he is the ultimate witness. So tomorrow, if we say this person is not there, who do you go there check with? Oh, check with the photographer. He knows exactly who are all in that particular place, right? If he becomes a witness to, if there was some untoward thing that happened there, he is a person to go to. So let's do a short recap here. We'll go into more verses, but I think it's good to integrate these things. So that's why we repeat this multiple times. So Atma Satyaha, which is truth or what is real. Atma Nityaha, which is it's permanent, right? It doesn't change. Everything is, and then Atma Sarvagataha, which means it's everywhere, all pervading. And the last one, which is incomprehensible that we talked about, is in Sanskrit, it's called Aprameyaha. You don't need to remember all these words, but it's something, sometimes, you see linkages, right? So that's the reason I bring this up. Aprameya means incomprehensible, something that I have limited capability, and I just come down to that awareness that I can't, and hence I need help, I need knowledge. So moving on, we go to the 19th verse now. Ya enam vesti hantaram nischenam manyate hatam ubhau tau na vijanito nayam hanti na hanyate. So here he brings in another aspect of it. The literal word meaning of this is, I am not the slayer, I'm not the killer, nor the killed. This is the literal. I mean, you might, one thing about Bhagavad Gita, that we have to appreciate, right? And I'm going back now. The first person who wrote even a commentary on Bhagavad Gita was none other than Adi Shankaracharya. Bhagavad Gita was actually in Vedavyas writings part of Mahabharata, as we know, and we learned that also in the Gita Dhyana Shloka, right? The first shloka. And it's a place called Bhishma Parva. It is the name of that particular chapter. In that Bhagavad Gita is covered. Nobody had even, gone in and looked at the depth of it other than Adi Shankaracharya. And today, even authors, commentators refer to that masterpiece that Adi Shankaracharya wrote, ages ago, right, as a reference, because it just peels the onion in a different way. Because if you just look at the literal meaning, people will get lost, and it will actually contradict each other. What one said just 2 stanzas back, you said this, now you're saying this, what does this mean? All the confusion will occur if you and I were to go just look at it ourselves, read the literal meaning. But then somebody who understands what is being conveyed, what is the deeper essence of it, right? Is where it comes in. And thanks to that teaching, right, what got triggered was that the Bhagavad Gita was translated into so many languages. What last I heard is about 80 languages, including about 75 languages, foreign languages, it has been translated into. But Guruji just recently was mentioning somewhere in one of such things, he said that's hardly anything. compared to that of a Bible. Bible is there in literally hundreds of languages. He said we should promote more. And that's the reason he's asking each and every one of us to do our part of it, right? Even if you can just, show the importance of what Bhagavad Gita brings in our life. Somewhere somebody will dawn and they'll start putting a text together with meanings, etc., translated. So where was I getting here? So basically here it says the meaning of this is I'm not the killer nor the killed. What is he saying? Killer means what? Somebody who is doing some action. That's the way we have to understand it. He's saying I don't do any action. What is I? I here means the divine. So here when the word I comes in, we have to relate it to not just Krishna. Krishna is saying it, but for us to understand it is the embodied self or the spirit. You're referring to the spirit. I neither fight nor get killed. It means what? I don't do any action, nor do I incur the result of that action. Now, who is it that does the action? You and I. So what it therefore becomes is that for me to act, even to lift my finger up, there has got to be an enabler. That enabler is that I. Without that enabler, I can't, pick one spoon, or nor can I speak one word at this particular moment, right? So therefore, for anything to happen in a bodily existence, and once when we are living the life, is that entity. That the minute we leave this body, it also leaves the body. So here, when we talk about I'm not the killer, I'm not the one who's to be killed, we have to go back to this example of space. If you look at it, right, everything happens in space, isn't it? Let's say if you go now to Ukraine and the Russia things there, in space, in an open space, in the Gulf War, something is happening there. Somewhere in some place, people are fighting, or people are arguing with each other, or there is a satsang happening somewhere, or there is a chanting happening somewhere. Everything is happening in space. But space does not get affected by the actions that are happening there. Yeah, you can see there are vibrations there, but vibrations are part of space. So space is not therefore affected by, whether it is a good action or a bad action, whatever it may be, nothing happens. And yet without space, no action can happen. So it is like this, right? Without the existence, core existence, without the consciousness, without the spirit, nothing can happen. Not even one thing can move in this world. And yet with it, only every action happens. So we just have to dig this into our head. All of us have been to movies, isn't it? We go to a cinema theater. And what is projected there? Some, from either an LED or from a projector, there are rays that get projected on that screen. Let's just say it is a war movie or some movie, right? You see people, there is a fire, there is bows and arrows happening, all that is happening there. You see it through your eyes. Anything happening to the screen? Absolutely nothing. In the interval time, they switch off the thing and you see the screen as it is, the white screen remains untouched. That is the same with consciousness. The consciousness in the presence of that, of that white screen, you're able to see all the actions, whatever they may be, and you got emotionally connected to it, etc., whatever it may be. But so in its presence, everything happens. By itself, it is unperturbed. It doesn't get affected. It does not do anything. Nor does it receive anything. It was not affected by, the bows and arrows that, the screen got tarnished or tainted or whatever, right? Because of blood or whatever that might have happened. Similarly, our consciousness. So therefore, I'm not the actor, nor am I the recipient of that action. Who therefore are acting? The people who are instruments of the divine, or the people who are manifested from the divine, you and I. you and I, or the insects, or the animals, whatever, without it, it can't do anything. And who's receiving the result of it? The same. So this in Sanskrit is referred to as akarta. Karta means doing. Akarta means not doing. Right? So Atma akarta. And then what is it for not receiving the results of an action? Right? Every time we do an action, we get some result, right? Good or bad, whatever, there is some result. It comes then and there, or it comes later. But we experience that thing. So that word is, that result of an action is referred to as bhokta. Bhokta means what? Recipient of something. So a bhokta means what? A always in Sanskrit means not. So not doer, not recipient. Abhokta. So Atma abhokta. Abhokta means I am not therefore receiving anything. So therefore, you would have heard on Vedantic scriptures, they said whatever you do, if you do good actions, there is a lot of punya that you get, and if you do bad actions, not desirable actions, or dharmic actions, you get papa, and you incur these, in your life, and our job is to sort of get rid of this, and a guru helps in a lot of this. You've heard this. So what does this tell us? If the self is, if the spirit is not the doer, or nor is the recipient of an action, there is no karma. Karma is therefore for people who are actually, based on that enabling by that is happening from that spirit, we are the ones who are going to take that karma, right? So all of this is just, again, this might be obvious, but it's just good to instill these things in, right? That because sometimes we say, why is God doing this? Why is that God happening this? Cruel things are happening, blah, 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 etc. We say a lot of these things, right? Everything has happened. He blesses everything, but the people who are doing it, the people who are receiving the result of it, he just enables all of this to happen. So 19th verse. Now the 20th verse, we'll jump into that. Now this work, there's a different meter to it. न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचित् नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः अजो नित्यं शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणः न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे. So here, a lot of this in Gita, you will notice is that the same points that are indicated in earlier verses get stressed again. And you might ask why. Because, our absorption power in whatever we learn is limited. We tend to, sometimes it goes on the top of our head. So sometimes you have to reestablish the same knowledge over and over and over again. It might be a different way of approaching the same thing, but you'll see that in Gita, the same thing, maybe the same point in this chapter will probably be brought up in another chapter later, and you'll wonder, why is it happening? Because I've forgotten it. Somebody has to tell me again, I have to do this. What we say when we were all children, right? We used to forget. Mother would say, why did you do? Forgot, ma. Now I'll not do it again, right? So to make sure that it sinks in, it soaks in, right? It has to be multiple times. It has to be bombarded multiple times. Or later, you say, okay, now I got it. I got it. So here it says, na jayate, riyate, na kadachit, right? He brings up this topic again. I am not born, nor will I ever die. Not done, right? And therefore, what does it mean? It again goes back to that the eternal entity, right? It is not affected when why is he saying all of this? To get into Arjuna's mind. What Arjuna has been worried about, what philosophical thing did he say? These people are going to die. And because of that, I am going to incur a lot of sin. So here he's using this word, right? There's a word called Ajo Nityaha. Ajo Nitya means Aja means birthless. Nityaha means deathless. It says what this soul is on a journey. It doesn't have a birth, it doesn't die. It just takes on different uniforms. It is going, it's gone on a temporarily, it's like that, stay there for a few years and say, this is no good for me, I go then to another house. It's not a permanent place. So similarly, the soul takes a temporary shelter in a particular body. Once the body job is finished, it leaves that body, goes into another one, so like going into another temporary shelter. And each one of them is temporary. But what is at the existing, continuing is that consciousness. Therefore, he says, Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. So therefore, don't grieve for these deaths of these people, because only the body is that they are going to continue to exist. Don't grieve, Arjuna, fight. So constantly, bring this awareness into Arjuna through multiple, knowledge aspects of this highest knowledge, which is the self. Now you understand, right? Why he started with the self-knowledge. Because nowhere else he can convey this. He couldn't have started with devotion. He started with karma yoga and all these other things, right? You have to go to the highest knowledge. What is the highest and what are the things you're thinking about is not correct. Therefore, he wants to bring in that thing. So here, for us, or what does this all tell us, right? For us, the journey in spirituality, which all are in some sense or the other, is the aim of spirituality is what? Is to know more about oneself. Oneself, at a superficial level, at an outside level, is to know my mind, my intellect, what are its pitfalls, all of that stuff. But then also realize that there is a deeper entity within myself, right? When we look at the 7 layers, the 7th layer, right? Based upon which everything else functions. Without it, nothing functions. Is to go to that core essence. And realizing what that core essence is has got these attributes. The imperishable, the changeless, can't be birthless, deathless, not a doer, not a recipient of the results, all of this, right? Maybe another example can a lot of the examples one needs to take just to get this soaked in. You're sitting in a room right now, all of us, right? And you have probably a light or something that's on top of your head, right, based upon which your face is visibly seen. You may be having a fan, but your whole house is governed by an electric circuit on which, in middle of which, through the wires, concealed wires, there is electricity flowing. Yes or no? That electricity is flowing through, multiple bulbs, multiple fans, your refrigerator, washing machine, multiple things. In some of the rooms, maybe that bulb is not functioning. It's fused. You have to change it, but you have not had the time to change it. And then there are some rooms in which the light is lit. In the room you are sitting right now, the light is lit. What is that core existence? Is that electricity. So look at the electricity as that core existence that we talked about. Whether or not that bulb, the bulb functions, what bulb is an body like each one of us. It's got a filament, be it an LED filament or a tungsten filament, whatever it might be. The enabler for that is the electricity. The bulb functions based on that, that electricity there, but the electricity will go even through a fused bulb. It is that I am. Whether I am part of that dead body, whether it goes from one body to the other, I still continue to exist. Right? So therefore, like that electricity, which is the core of this, in one household where we can all resonate with what all it does, right? Similarly here, it provides the light or it provides the air, whatever it is, right? Similarly, in each one of us, right? There is a core existence that applies, and that existence continues after the death of one body into the next. Okay. So time is it. We'll just do a couple more verses and then we'll continue after that. 22nd verse. No, second, just 21st verse. I've not touched on that, right? 21st verse, 21st we talked about. 22nd verse, sorry. 22nd. Veda, sorry. Vasamsi jirnani yasa vihaya navani krishnati naroparani tata sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani sanyati navani dehi. This is a beautiful stanza, so poetic, got a lot of meaning to it. And maybe the first sentence that we should start with is this, right? Guruji has said this in a very beautiful. He says, every death is nothing but a change in your wardrobe. Every death is nothing but a change in your wardrobe. What does it mean? And that's the example he's taking. When do we change our clothes? When do we change our wardrobe? I'm not talking about when we are growing from childhood, etc. That's one thing. Let's just say that size does not change, etc. And you're there, right? What is it? When do we change? When a particular dress is worn out, it is no longer something, no, I can't wear it anymore. Or you don't have any more interest in it. It doesn't serve my purpose. I was wearing it when I was doing a particular job. Now I've changed to another job. This dress doesn't suit me. Therefore, the purpose of the dress in this current environment is not suitable. And hence, I have to change my wardrobe. So therefore, if you look at it, the purpose ultimately was what defines what clothes I keep in my wardrobe. And I constantly change it. Same thing with our body. So this word called Anyani Sanyati Navani Dehi. It says the embodied self or the Atman or the spirit sheds off the outer layer of it, which is the body, and puts on a new body. Just like you change the wardrobe, you change from one dress and you move to another dress. Similarly, the Atman or the self, sheds off the body, but continues his journey, just takes on another body and continues. Because it has got a purpose. In a particular body, Guruji has said this, there is a purpose for each and every one of us that comes, right? Based upon impression, based upon whatever we have done in the past. In order to fulfill them, we take a particular purpose. The day the purpose gets fulfilled, the body leaves. Yeah, some people live on natural death, at the whatever age it is. And you see some people dying off very early. The question always comes up, right? How come somebody is just born dying, or somebody who's just 3 years old, 4 years old dying? Take Adi Shankaracharya for himself. He lived just 32 years, very, very young. Right? What is it that we have to relate to is the fact that he came into a body form. He said that he was none other than Shiva himself. He came into the body form to get certain things done. He translated a lot of books. He made a lot of teachings. He shed the lack of understanding of the Sanatana Dharma, went around India, did all of that thing. And once that purpose was done, left the body. Right? Same thing we have to understand. So that is not for, therefore, that something so there are two things, right? One is the body, and then the environment in which the body is. What is the environment? The place, the family, the situations that the person has to go through. And if that person fulfills those, whatever desires, whatever impressions he or she carries in that environment, and no longer can any more be fulfilled, that purpose is served. He then moves on to another body and continues the journey where the circumstances, where the environment is amicable for they're all in a journey. And each of these births, one step, one step, one step. In a particular birth, one step, a particular things got fulfilled. Time to move on, take another birth and continue the progress. So the story of evolution, which the soul is undertaking, needs a body with a certain set of attributes and an environment with a certain set of attributes for it to fulfill those desires, fulfill those impressions that have been carried forward from the past. And once that purpose is done, to leave. The same thing is taken here in an example where how you change your wardrobe, how you change your dress. Right? You just have to look at it as very simply this, right? You might say, I gave it as donation, but just simply look at this as the purpose of that dress is no longer is served. Right? I no longer need it. I need to be giving it to somebody. Or, it is no longer it's a rag. I can't do it. Or I've changed my job. Whatever it might be, any possessions for that matter. In this case, just because it's just a layer, right? Just like the human body is a layer on top of the embodied soul, it's just an outer covering, for it to do its actions. Similarly, the dress is an outer covering for us to do our transactions outside world. So once the purpose of that dress is served, right, we shed that off and change the wardrobe. So this particular verse, we just need to internalize this thing. So you can you can look at it from another angle also. Let's just say that you get the services of some technician, or maybe it's a plumber, maybe it's an electrical technician. He comes and you say there's a repair. What is it? Doesn't he do this? He comes, he takes a particular tool, he does something, finishes, that tool purpose is served, he brings it, takes another tool and he does it. He continues it until the repair work is done, isn't it? That same tool. So we also, therefore, we've been given different tools with which we have to fulfill certain things in one birth, in one body. Once we complete it, we leave that, move on, take another body, take another tool and move on. So this continues, moves on and on and on. And so this, you see the meter of this particular verse also is one where, it just, it awakens you from the previous verses. So Vasamsi Jinani Yata Vihaya Navani Grishnati Naroparani. So this verse, right, if you just look at it as it just says worn out clothes. The way to look at it more is not about worn out. It's just that I no longer need it. Its purpose is served. And so we have to just realize that, once a body comes in a human form or whatever form it is, its purpose is served, it's time to move to another body. And the only way it can leave another body is the body to shed itself off, and for the soul to move from one entity to another entity, another family, another place, another environment, and continues. So we will continue with the other verses in the next class. So few minutes we have. If anybody wants to quickly reflect on anything that we picked up today or share some other thoughts on it, welcome. I'll just stop the recording here so we can keep it for some more time.